Amber Reeves sat alone in her bedroom on March 12, 2019, staring at college brochures scattered across her unmade bed. Outside, rain tapped gently against her window, matching the hollow feeling in her chest. At 17, she possessed both intelligence and beauty, but lacked the one thing she craved most: genuine connection. Her 3.2 GPA reflected not her capability but her distraction, mind always wandering to what she was missing. The house around her felt cavernous and empty. Her father, Dr. James Reeves, was performing surgery at Pinecrest Memorial, while her mother Catherine argued corporate cases downtown. Their absence wasn't unusual. The distinguished neurosurgeon and attorney operated on predictable schedules that rarely included family dinners or weekend activities. "We're providing for your future," her mother often reminded her, as if financial security could substitute for emotional presence. Amber moved to her window, watching raindrops race down the glass. Her last relationship had ended painfully 3 months ago, leaving her adrift and lonely in the quiet house. She'd learned early that attention from others, especially men, could temporarily fill the void her parents' ambition had created. By June 2019, this search for connection would lead to a pregnancy test taken with trembling hands. But in March, Amber was simply a teenage girl in an empty house, desperate to matter to someone. 15 miles across town, in Lakeview Estates, Ethan Blackwood reviewed blueprints in his sleek home office. At 35, he projected casual confidence as he made notes on a kitchen renovation project. The glass walls of his modernist home framed an impressive view of the lake, a testament to his success as the founder of Blackwood Design. "Running late tonight," Valerie called from their bedroom, sliding diamond earrings into place. At 33, his wife had recently been promoted to administrative director at Pinecrest Memorial Hospital. Her dark hair was pulled into a severe bun, her movements precise and efficient as she gathered her things. "The quarterly budget meeting might run until 9, she continued, barely looking at him as she checked her appearance one final time. "There's that charity gala on the 25th, Ethan reminded her, not looking up from his drawings. "The Henderson Foundation thing." "Already in my calendar," Valerie replied, keys jingling in her hand. "Black tie, correct?" Ethan nodded, watching as she left without a kiss goodbye. Their marriage had evolved into a business partnership, something neither acknowledged aloud. They projected the image of the perfect power couple, his creative vision complementing her administrative efficiency, but privately, they passed like strangers in their beautiful home. The silence after Valerie left was familiar. Ethan poured himself a whiskey, loosening his collar as he stared at the rain beyond his windows. What his colleagues observed, but his wife never saw, was how his charm intensified with certain clients, particularly younger women who responded to his attention. The wedding ring on his finger became an easily forgotten detail during those carefully orchestrated meetings. On April 15, 2019, these separate worlds collided when James Reeves contracted Blackwood Design for a kitchen renovation. "We'll need to update everything," Ethan explained, walking through the Reeves kitchen. James nodded distractedly, checking his watch every few minutes. "Whatever my wife wants, just coordinate with her," James said, already moving toward the door. "I've got surgery in an hour." "I'm leaving for a conference this afternoon," Catherine added, car keys in hand. "But our daughter will be home after school. She can let you out when you're finished measuring." The Reeves exited their home with the casual abandonment of people accustomed to prioritizing career over family, leaving Ethan alone in their kitchen. He worked methodically, measuring and photographing the space, until the front door opened at 3:15 p.m. Amber stood in the doorway, backpack slung over one shoulder, rain dampening her blonde hair. She observed Ethan silently before he noticed her, taking in his focused expression as he worked. "You must be Amber," he said when he finally looked up, offering a smile that softened his professional demeanor. "Your parents mentioned you'd be home." "They're never home," Amber replied with unexpected honesty, dropping her backpack on a chair. Ethan's laugh was warm, creating an immediate connection. "Mine were the same way. Always somewhere more important." This simple acknowledgement, the recognition of her reality, felt like a revelation. Amber sat at the kitchen counter, watching him work for the next hour. Their conversation flowed naturally from kitchen designs to her interests. His questions focused entirely on her opinions rather than her achievements. "You have a good eye," Ethan told her, showing her preliminary sketches. "What do you think about opening this wall?" The genuine request for her input, not about grades or college applications, but something creative and real, was intoxicating. By the time Ethan packed up his equipment, Amber had shared more about herself than she had with anyone in months. What began as professional consultation evolved with dangerous speed. By early May, Ethan was scheduling meetings when he knew the elder Reeves would be absent. Conversations shifted from countertop materials to personal confidences. "Nobody really sees me," Amber told him during his 5th visit, sitting closer than necessary as they reviewed color samples. "It's like I'm invisible in my own house." "I see you," Ethan replied, holding her gaze. His hand brushed hers as he reached for a sample, the contact brief but deliberate. On May 18th, after claiming to need additional measurements, Ethan suggested they discuss design options somewhere quieter. "I have some portfolios in my car we could review," he offered, knowing her parents wouldn't return for hours. The interior of his BMW became their private world that afternoon, portfolios forgotten as conversation turned intimate, then physical. Amber's inexperience contrasted with Ethan's calculated expertise, his whispered assurances that this connection was special, satisfying her desperate need for validation. "This has never happened with a client before," he told her afterward, brushing hair from her face. "There's something about you, Amber." She believed him completely, unaware that similar scenes had played out before with other vulnerable women. In that moment, she felt chosen, special, visible for the first time. By June, their meetings had become regular, carefully orchestrated around her parents' predictable absences and Valerie's hospital schedule. Ethan maintained his separate worlds with practiced precision, discussing backsplash options with Catherine Reeves in the morning, meeting her daughter in secluded locations in the afternoon, then returning home to Valerie in the evening. Amber constructed an elaborate emotional reality around their encounters, interpreting Ethan's calculated attention as love. Her friends noticed her withdrawal, her constant checking of her phone, her secretive smiles. "You've been so weird lately," her friend MIA commented during lunch on June 3rd. "You're, like, never around anymore." "I'm just busy," Amber replied, eyes fixed on her phone, waiting for Ethan's next message. What neither knew as spring turned to summer was that their carefully compartmentalized arrangement was about to collapse under the weight of unexpected consequences. Consequences that would ultimately be measured not in broken promises, but in lives destroyed. On June 10, 2019, Amber stared at the 2 pink lines on the pregnancy test, her world tilting on its axis. At 17, with senior year approaching, the confirmation of what her missed period had suggested sent her heart racing. She called Ethan immediately, voice barely above a whisper. They met at Riverside Park, far from familiar eyes. Summer heat shimmered above the pavement as Amber waited on a secluded bench. When Ethan appeared, his typically confident stride faltered. Something in her voice during their brief call had communicated the gravity of the situation. The words "I'm pregnant" hung in the humid air. Ethan froze beside her, his silence becoming a physical presence between them. When she finally turned to look at him, his face had gone pale, eyes fixed on the pregnancy test she'd handed him wrapped in tissue. His shock lasted just under 2 minutes before his expression shifted. The transformation was subtle but unmistakable, calculation replacing surprise as his mind worked through implications. When he finally spoke, his voice dropped to an intimate murmur, suggesting that perhaps this development was the universe forcing honesty about their connection. Each carefully chosen phrase, that he'd never connected with anyone as he had with her, that maybe they were meant to be a family, targeted her deepest insecurities. When Amber mentioned Valerie, Ethan revealed more about his marriage than ever before. He painted it as a business arrangement between career-focused individuals, devoid of real intimacy. His wife, he explained with perfect sincerity, didn't know the real him, didn't want to know him the way Amber did. The only complication was timing. Valerie's family connections could destroy his business if he didn't handle the separation carefully. He needed time to protect what he'd built so he could provide for Amber and their child. Amber leaned into him, relief washing through her body as his arm encircled her shoulders. She inhaled his cologne, committing this moment to memory. She could give him time. They had created life together. Proof they were meant to be together. Through late June and July, Ethan's existence transformed into an increasingly complex performance. His life segmented into compartments that could never intersect. Morning meetings with clients, afternoon rendezvous with Amber, evening appearances with Valerie. His phone contained separate conversation threads, his calendar a masterwork of coded entries. The mental toll manifested in occasional slips, arriving late, forgetting commitments, momentary confusions about which version of himself he was presenting. Valerie noticed the changes but misinterpreted their cause. The late nights, distracted responses, sudden work emergencies, all registered as potential business troubles rather than infidelity. Her questions about his schedule carried concern rather than suspicion. Each lie came more easily than the last, his moral compass steadily recalibrating to accommodate his dual existence. Across town, Amber's world contracted to revolve exclusively around Ethan and the growing life inside her. Each text, each call, each stolen hour together became the center point of her existence. School friends drifted away as she declined invitations and avoided questions. Loose summer clothing concealed the subtle changes in her body, changes she examined with wonder each night, whispering promises to the child about the family they would soon become. Her bedroom transformed into a shrine to their future. Magazine clippings of small houses with gardens, nursery designs in soft yellows and greens, even a wedding dress photo adorned her bulletin board. The fantasy sustained her through long hours alone, her parents still oblivious to the seismic changes in their daughter's life. Only her friend MIA still attempted connection. Texting almost daily with invitations Amber consistently declined. When they crossed paths during summer registration, Mia's concerned questions met with hollow reassurances. The cardigan Amber clutched around herself despite the July heat became a physical barrier between her past life and her all-consuming present. By August, reality pressed against fantasy with increasing insistence. At 11 weeks pregnant, Amber could no longer completely conceal her changing body. Each day without action felt increasingly like betrayal, each excuse about needing more time more hollow than the last. Their meeting on August 3rd carried a different energy. They sat in his car at their usual secluded overlook, but the air between them crackled with tension. Amber arrived with determination hardening her features, patience evaporated in the summer heat. Her demand for a specific timeline, a date when he would finally leave Valerie, disrupted their usual script of reassurance and deferral. Ethan's explanations about business complications and legal considerations crashed against Amber's emotional ultimatum. Her tears failed to move him as she demanded proof of his commitment. The painful realization dawned as his vague responses revealed the truth she'd been avoiding. He had no intention of leaving his wife, at least not on any timeline that would acknowledge their child. As twilight descended around their parked car, something cold settled in Amber's chest, replacing the desperate hope she'd nurtured for weeks. Her hand moved protectively to her stomach as she delivered her ultimatum. Choose us or lose us forever by month's end. What Amber couldn't see was the calculation behind Ethan's concerned expression, the assessment of risks, the mapping of exit strategies. What Ethan couldn't see was the dangerous transformation occurring behind Amber's tears, the crystallization of desperate love into something far more volatile than mere heartbreak, a determination that would eventually be measured not in broken promises, but broken lives. August slipped into the shadows as Amber's ultimatum hung unanswered between them. Ethan's responses to her texts grew increasingly sporadic, each one vague about his progress in leaving Valerie. The calendar pages turning without action pushed Amber toward a dangerous edge. On August 12th, instead of waiting for him to call, she drove to the Blackwood residence in Lakeview Estates for the first time. The modernist glass and concrete structure stood like a fortress on the lakefront, its clean lines and massive windows projecting success and confidence. Amber parked her mother's borrowed car half a block away, heart pounding as she observed the house from a distance. At 5:43 p.m., Valerie Blackwood arrived home, her sleek black sedan pulling into the driveway with mechanical precision. From her vantage point, Amber studied the woman who stood between her and happiness. Valerie moved with efficient grace, briefcase in one hand, phone in the other, not a dark hair out of place in her severe bob. The sight of her, real, solid, successful, sent a cold wave through Amber's body. This wasn't the uncaring career woman Ethan had described, but someone substantial, elegant, formidable. This initial surveillance evolved into a pattern over the following weeks. Amber created a detailed mental map of the Blackwoods routines, Valerie's early departures and late returns, the cleaning service that arrived on Tuesdays, the nights when lights blazed in Ethan's home office until midnight. Her pregnancy, now entering the second trimester, remained remarkably easy to conceal with strategic clothing choices, her petite frame showing only the slightest changes visible to her alone. On August 24th, she followed them to the Henderson Foundation Charity Gala. The annual black tie event at the Pinecrest Grand Hotel drew the city's elite, allowing Amber to blend into the crowd gathered outside to watch arrivals. When the Blackwoods emerged from their car, the sight struck her like a physical blow. Ethan in his tuxedo, hand resting possessively on Valerie's back as she smiled for local photographers in her midnight blue gown. They moved with the unconscious synchronicity of long-term couples, their public persona projecting perfect unity. The image burned itself into Amber's consciousness. That night, she sat in her darkened bedroom until dawn, one hand resting on her growing belly, the other clutching her phone displaying the society page photo of the Blackwoods captioned "Power couple Ethan and Valerie Blackwood support children's hospital expansion." September brought a profound shift in Amber's mental landscape. The pregnancy reached 16 weeks, hormones coursing through her body as her child grew. Sleep became elusive, her nights filled with vivid scenarios playing on endless loop. What began as fantasies of Ethan leaving Valerie evolved gradually into darker alternatives. If Valerie were somehow gone, really gone, wouldn't that solve everything? Her obsession expanded to encompass both Blackwoods equally. Valerie was no longer just an obstacle but became a target of intense study. The woman's schedule, habits, weaknesses, all catalogued with methodical precision. Amber created a private digital album of surreptitiously taken photos. Valerie entering the hospital, Valerie at lunch with colleagues, Valerie alone at night by their living room window. She doesn't deserve him, Amber whispered to her unborn child during their nightly one-sided conversations. She doesn't even want children. Not like us. We need to remove the obstacles between us and Daddy. The plural we slipped into her vocabulary naturally, the baby becoming complicit in her increasingly disturbed thinking. Her school performance plummeted as senior year began, teachers' concerns meeting blank stares or vague excuses about not feeling well. Dark circles formed under her eyes from nights spent driving past the Blackwood home or scrolling through Valerie's professional social media profiles. The decision crystallized on September 15th. Amber had tracked the Blackwoods to Marcello's, an upscale Italian restaurant downtown. Through the window, she watched them from her car, parked across the street. Their conversation appeared animated, Valerie leaning forward, her hand occasionally touching Ethan's arm or face with casual intimacy. When Ethan laughed at something Valerie said, his expression showed none of the strain or unhappiness he claimed characterized their marriage. Their dessert arrived with a small candle. Anniversary, Amber realized with sudden, cold clarity. As Valerie raised her wine glass in toast, Ethan leaned across the table and kissed her. Not the perfunctory peck of obligation but something lingering and genuine. When they parted, he said something that made Valerie's face light up with pleasure. 20 minutes later, Amber overheard fragments of their conversation as they exited the restaurant. Second honeymoon. Maldives in December. Something shattered inside her that night. Back in her bedroom, staring at the collection of future dreams on her bulletin board, a terrible calm descended. The realization was simple. Ethan had never intended to leave Valerie. Every promise had been a lie. If I can't have him, she whispered to her reflection, hand on her swelling abdomen, neither can she. The final weeks of September marked a transformation noticed by the few people still paying attention to Amber. Her English teacher observed the sudden calm that replaced her previous distraction, marking it as potential improvement while missing its true significance. The school counselor noted her renewed focus during a brief hallway interaction, interpreting it as adaptation to her senior year pressures. What no one witnessed was Amber's methodical preparation. During a final home measurement visit for the nearly completed kitchen renovation, she carefully studied the Blackwood house layout, noting entrance points, blind spots, and the master bedroom location. Online searches on her phone included untraceable queries about household accidents and undetectable methods of elimination. On September 27th, she purchased several items from different stores across town. Heavy-duty cleaning gloves, a prepaid phone, dark clothing a size larger than her normal wear. Each acquisition made with cash, each store chosen to avoid security cameras. Her final conversation with Ethan occurred on September 30th, a deceptively pleasant exchange where she apologized for her hormonal outburst and pressuring him unfairly. His relief was palpable even through the phone, his voice warming as she assured him she understood the complexities of his situation. "I just want us all to be happy," she told him, voice gentle with newly discovered purpose. "Things will work out exactly as they should." As September ended, Amber stood before her bulletin board one last time. With steady hands, she removed every picture, every dream clipping, every fantasy of their life together. In their place, she pinned a single photo captured from outside the restaurant window, Ethan and Valerie kissing on their anniversary. Some obstacles, she told her unborn child as she stroked her now visible pregnancy bump, need to be permanently removed. October 2nd, 2019 arrived with unusual clarity. Amber woke before her alarm, the pale autumn light barely filtering through her curtains. For weeks, she had battled insomnia and anxiety, but today a strange calm enveloped her. She moved with deliberate precision, showering methodically, eating a small breakfast, and sending a text to her mother claiming a group project would keep her out late. Her reflection in the mirror showed a different person than the girl who had first fallen for Ethan's attention. For months pregnant, though still able to conceal it with strategic clothing, her face had thinned, dark circles permanent beneath her eyes. She selected her outfit with care, black leggings, black hoodie, dark running shoes, nondescript and practical. The items she had purchased days earlier waited in her backpack. At 10:23 a.m., she texted Ethan, "We need to talk tonight. Important news about the baby." His response came quickly, with surprising warmth, "Can't tonight. Dinner with Valerie. Home business meeting." The confirmation that both would be at the house tonight was all she needed. She replied with uncharacteristic understanding, suggesting they speak tomorrow instead. One final deception. The day passed in slow motion. She attended classes as usual, her teachers noting her unusual focus, interpreting it as academic engagement rather than the hyper-focused state of someone executing a meticulously planned strategy. At 4:30 p.m., she declined a ride from MIA, claiming her father would pick her up. Instead, she walked to the bus stop and headed toward Lakeview Estates. By 6:45 p.m., Amber positioned herself within view of the Blackwood residence, concealed by the growing darkness and decorative landscaping of a neighboring property. She watched Valerie arrive home at 7:10 p.m., followed by Ethan at 7:25 p.m. Through the massive windows, she observed them moving through their evening routine, Valerie changing clothes, Ethan preparing drinks, both moving to the kitchen where they appeared to prepare dinner together. At 8:05 p.m., with twilight deepening into night, Amber approached the house from the side where landscaping provided cover. The kitchen renovation project had given her intimate knowledge of the home's layout, including the side entrance Ethan often left unlocked when expecting contractors. Her gloved hand found the door unlocked as expected. She entered silently, the sounds of conversation and clinking silverware coming from the dining room. Amber stood in the hallway, listening to Valerie describing a hospital board disagreement while Ethan offered occasional responses. Taking a deep breath, she removed the kitchen knife from her backpack and stepped into the dining room doorway. For 3 seconds, no one moved. Valerie, facing the doorway, froze mid-sentence, confusion crossing her face at the sight of a teenager in dark clothing in her home. Ethan, his back to the entrance, remained oblivious until he registered his wife's expression. "Who are?" Valerie began. Ethan turned, recognition and horror washing over his face in an instant. "Amber? What are you doing here?" "I thought we should all talk," Amber said, her voice unnaturally calm as she stepped fully into the light. "Since we're going to be a family." Valerie's confusion deepened. Ethan, who is this? She's no one. A client's daughter. She's been having some issues. I'm carrying his child, Amber interrupted, one hand moving to her stomach. 17 weeks now. He promised we'd be together. The color drained from Valerie's face as she turned to her husband. What is she talking about? Ethan stood, hands raised placatingly toward both women. She's confused. Troubled. Amber, you need to leave now. Tell her the truth. Amber's voice sharpened. Tell her about us. About how you said you'd leave her once you figured things out. There is no us, Ethan said firmly, moving slowly toward her. There never was. You've misinterpreted things, created a fantasy. The word fantasy broke something inside her. In that moment, every promise, every tender touch, every whispered assurance collapsed into dust. Ethan wasn't denying their relationship to protect her. He was erasing her completely. What happened next occurred with dreamlike slowness in Amber's perception. She lunged forward as Ethan reached for her arm. The knife, initially meant as a threat, a tool to force honesty, found its mark below his ribs. His expression of disbelief mirrored her own shock at the sudden violence. Valerie's scream shattered the moment. She rushed toward her husband as he stumbled backward, blood spreading across his crisp blue shirt. Amber watched as if from outside herself as Valerie reached for her phone. The second attack was even less planned than the first, a reflexive response to threat. The knife struck Valerie's neck, severing the carotid artery with terrible efficiency. The dining room transformed into a scene of horror in under 60 seconds. Ethan collapsed near the table, attempting to crawl toward his wife, while Valerie lay motionless, blood pooling beneath her on the polished concrete floor. The metallic smell filled Amber's nostrils as she stood, knife hanging loosely in her hand, watching them with detached curiosity. When both were still, she placed the knife on the dining table and sat in one of the elegant chairs. She waited for the rush of satisfaction, the sense of triumph or relief that would validate her actions. Instead, a vast emptiness spread through her chest. She sat there for 23 minutes, according to the sleek wall clock, watching blood congeal on the floor and feeling nothing at all. At 9:18 p.m., Amber wiped down everything she had touched except the knife. That had been Ethan's, taken from their kitchen during her last visit. She walked out through the side door, closed it carefully behind her, and began the long walk home through darkened residential streets. Passing cars occasionally illuminated her figure, but no one noticed the teenage girl in dark clothing, head down, moving with purpose through the affluent neighborhood. Back in her bedroom by 11:35 p.m., she removed her clothes, placing them in a garbage bag she would dispose of the next day. She showered again, scrubbing every inch of skin, then put on her usual pajamas. Sitting on her bed, she touched her stomach, whispering, "It's just us now. Nobody will ever lie to us again." She slept dreamlessly for the first time in months. The morning of October 3rd arrived with fog hanging over Lakeview Estates. At 10:15 a.m., Elena Diaz, the Blackwoods housekeeper of 5 years, used her key to enter through the front door for her weekly cleaning. Her piercing screams brought neighbors running from 3 houses away. By 10:22 a.m., the first police units arrived, followed quickly by emergency medical services who could do nothing but confirm what was already evident. Police secured a half-mile perimeter around the residence as neighbors gathered in shocked clusters on manicured lawns. Detective Marcus Chen, first senior officer on scene, noted the unusual nature of the crime in his preliminary report. High-end residential area, minimal sign of forced entry, suggesting victims knew their attacker. Scene indicates personal motivation rather than robbery or random violence. By noon, forensic teams were processing the scene while officers canvassed the neighborhood. Amber watched the coverage on her phone during lunch period, expression carefully neutral as classmates discussed the breaking news of a double homicide in the city's most exclusive neighborhood. What she didn't know was that a security camera at the entrance to Lakeview Estates had captured a partial image of a figure matching her description walking away from the direction of the Blackwood home at 9:24 p.m. The investigation was already beginning to trace a path directly to her door. For 24 hours after the murders, Amber maintained her normal routine with unsettling precision. She attended school, completed homework, and texted friends as if nothing had happened. But beneath this facade, reality was fracturing. She sent Ethan 3 messages that went unanswered, each more urgent than the last. Her final text, "We need to talk about the future," revealed the depth of her disconnection from reality. By evening, the Blackwood murders dominated local news. Amber watched coverage obsessively on her laptop, her expression blank as reporters described the brutal slaying of prominent couple. When her mother knocked on her bedroom door to ask about dinner, she flinched violently, drawing a concerned look. "Are you feeling all right?" Catherine asked, noticing her daughter's pallor. "Just tired," Amber replied, closing her laptop quickly. That night, the careful compartmentalization began to crumble. She woke screaming from a nightmare where Ethan and Valerie stood silently at the foot of her bed, their wounds gaping but expressions oddly forgiving. Her father appeared in the doorway, alarmed by the noise, but accepted her explanation of a bad dream. The next morning, 3 police vehicles appeared outside the Reeves home. Detective Chen and 2 officers approached the front door while Amber watched from her bedroom window, a strange calm settling over her. When her mother called her downstairs, she descended with mechanical steps. "Amber Reeves?" Detective Chen asked, though he clearly knew the answer. "We'd like to ask you some questions about Ethan and Valerie Blackwood." The evidence had accumulated with devastating speed. Security footage, phone records showing her text to Ethan, a neighbor who recalled seeing someone matching her description near the house. When they mentioned DNA testing underway, something shifted in Amber's eyes. "He loved me," she said suddenly. "We were going to be a family." Her parents' confusion turned to horror as she placed a protective hand on her stomach. The pregnancy they'd somehow failed to notice now impossible to miss in her thin sleep shirt. At the police station, Amber maintained an eerie composure during initial questioning. She answered factually about her movements but spoke of Ethan in present tense. When shown photos of the crime scene, she showed no reaction beyond blinking slowly. "Ethan would understand why I did it," she told Detective Chen, her voice gentle as if explaining something obvious. "He couldn't leave her because of business complications. I removed the complication." The psychiatric evaluation revealed a profound dissociative state. Dr. Simmons documented a separation between actions and emotional consequences and persistent delusional framework. The pregnancy complicated her detention, necessitating special medical monitoring as her case moved through the system. Her parents, devastated by dual revelations, struggled between supporting their daughter and horror at her actions. James Reeves emptied retirement accounts for legal representation while Catherine took leave from her firm to attend every medical appointment. As her pregnancy progressed, Amber's mental state gradually shifted. The reality of her actions began to penetrate the protective dissociation. During her 7th month, she asked her mother a question that revealed the first crack in her delusion. "The baby won't know its father, will it?" The trial revealed a community deeply divided. The prosecution presented evidence of planning and intent: the knife, the unlocked door, the dark clothing. The defense built their case around manipulation by an older authority figure, pregnancy hormones affecting judgment, and mental illness. Expert testimony about adolescent brain development and vulnerability to emotional manipulation resonated with some jurors. Others focused on the brutality of the attacks, particularly against Valerie, who had been unaware of her husband's infidelity. After delivering her baby, a girl with Ethan's dark eyes, Amber appeared in court visibly changed. The dissociation had given way to a haunted awareness. When the verdict came, she stood with shoulders slumped, no longer the confident teenager who had entered the Blackwood home months earlier. The conviction on 2 counts of second-degree murder included considerations for mental health treatment. During sentencing, Amber spoke directly to the victims' families, her first display of genuine remorse. "I destroyed everything," she said, voice breaking. 3 families, not just one. "Nothing can undo what I've done." Custody of the infant was awarded to Amber's parents, with strict supervision requirements. As she was led away to begin her sentence, the true consequence of obsession hung in the courtroom: a child who would grow up knowing her origins stemmed from delusion and death.